Welcome to ohmTown Daily News Show. It starts at 6 o'clock, runs till, and I guess until I'm done, but typically about an hour. And what it's all about is I am Mayor Watt. That's my site. The news that gets aggregated into ohmTown.com gets funneled into 6 categories: create, news, education, entertainment, social, and technology. And then in there's 50 channels, all of which I want to bring to Twitch. And if you're listening to this via the podcast, you're not seeing me scroll my mouse over the menu. That's at ohmTown.com. Anyway, go and check it all out. I've already selected about 20 articles. I go through them. I throw a little bit of my perspective, my context into it, if there is anything. But for the most part, I introduce you to some news. I throw it in chat. I throw it into the show notes at YouTube and at the podcast. So definitely you can, if you have Apple Podcasts, you can go and pull it up. I haven't distributed it anywhere else yet, but I'm looking at it. It's just one more thing to do, really. Not a big deal. And I spun up a presence over at TikTok because, you know, my little snippets of the show are very exciting and engaging. Mainly because, well, they're not, but my sarcasm may be lost there. I'm not bombastic. I'm not crazy about things. You know, my reactions aren't, oh my gosh. And even things like this thing that happened at the Oscars with Will Smith and Chris Rock. So many people are covering it, and there's really nothing to it other than the fact that if it were anybody else, they'd be in jail. But hey, privilege has its privilege, right? At any rate, I'm going to get on with the show. Again, I've already selected the 20 articles, and the first one is in the Stock Marketeers channel. And it's in a section called Financial Crime. Former Yale administrator stole $40 million. Every time I read this headline, I'm shocked. Shocked! Pretending to buy computer equipment for the university, but instead she bought a fleet of luxury cars and 4 houses. Jamie Patrone estimated that 90% of all computer equipment orders she made for Yale's medical school over 8 years were bogus. Not sure how this could even slip by anybody's audit. Normally, there is a process that another segment of the institution audits this. So let's click this link here. This is over at marketwatch.com. It's written by Lucas I. Alpert. And this is an 8-year period. Not bad, right? Supplementing your income, $40 million over 8 years from Yale. I guess when you have that much money, you let it slide under the radar. It says federal prosecutors say Jamie Patrone, 42, used the money to buy a fleet of luxury cars, including Mercedes, Land Rovers, Cadillac Escalades. What she bought shouldn't really matter unless it was, yeah, I don't know what. I have to rein in my comments. You know, I'm trying to appeal to a lot of people, and my comments get a little blue if I don't filter them. So I'm reading the room, and you can make your own jokes, unless you throw something in chat and say, hey, joke away. Yeah, this isn't ohmTown After Dark, which is a channel that I'd like to start. But it would have to be late at night. So after 11 p.m. Eastern. So anyway, she pleaded guilty on Monday to wire fraud and filing false tax returns and faces up to 30 years in prison when she's sentenced in June. Until then, she's free on a $1 million bond. She's free. Her attorney didn't immediately return a message seeking comment. Okay, so if you have the ability to pay a $1 million bond, which very few people do. You're out free, which is fine. That's part of the criminal justice system here. And let's see what else. Hold on one second. Let me check something. Let's see. Yeah. So, pardon the sound of silence there. Patrone began working for Yale in 1999 and for the medical school in 2008, and she had most recently served as the director of finance for its emergency medicine department. As part of her job, she was able to authorize equipment purchases without additional approvals as long as the orders were below $10,000, prosecutors said. Oh, so prosecutors say that in 2021, she purchased more than 8,000 tablet computers, all in orders smaller than $10,000. In one 10-week period that year, she ordered $2.1 million worth of equipment. Yeah, so here's the problem with their... if you didn't detect it, let me spell it out. As long as the orders are below $10,000, yes, but there's also a cap. There should be a cap, and it should go to finance. Not, she's in charge of a certain part of finance, but there is supposed to be institutional level finance managers in the enterprise's administration offices. They should be auditing all of this. And when you hit a certain threshold, regardless, everything kicks into action to verify that the equipment is in there, it's been inventoried by IT or wherever, whatever organization, subunit the enterprise has. And POs are fulfilled and people have seen them in shipping, everything, it's all tracked. Yale should be tracking this. Of all places, an Ivy League school, a research enterprise, should be auditing this. And, it's not cheap to go to Yale. So now, who knows what it's going to end up costing, and it's all going to get passed on to students or absorbed into the institution's investment portfolio as a loss. Insurance might go up for the school, whatever. And hopefully they'll change their policy and procedures, because if I was their consultant, I would have been over this a long time ago. In all, prosecutors say Patrone caused $40.5 million in losses to Yale. They also say Patrone never declared any of the income on her tax. Well, of course. Do you think criminals file their taxes legally? And no returns at all between 2017 and 2020. Yeah. In total, she defrauded the IRS out of over $6 million, according to prosecutors. Oh my goodness. As part of her guilty plea, Patrone agreed to forfeit $560,000 that was seized from her accounts, so she's burned through all of it. Two $135,000 Mercedes-Benzes. Is the plural for Benzes or Mercedes-Benz Benzi? I don't know. They spelled it Benzes, but I don't know. I like the Latin Benzi. And a $90,000 Range Rover. Oh, so she got the cheap one. Two Cadillac Escalades and a Dodge Charger. Wow, she's all over the park, huh? And she also agreed to turn over 3 properties she co-owns in Connecticut and another in Georgia. Wow. You can find out more if you go over to the Market Watch article. Former Yale administrator stole $40 million pretending to buy computer equipment for the university. Instead, she bought a fleet of luxury cars and 4 houses. That still can't add up to $40 million. Let's move on. The next article. Quaymar gets serious in tech and design with the Cerio Q grinder. So this is in the Order of the Bean channel, which is all about coffee, equipment, people, places, things. And it says Italian coffee grinder and bar equipment brand, Quaymar. Yeah, it's spelled Quamar. Has rolled out the Cerio Q grinder, featuring an innovative smart motor that adjusts power consumption and a patent-pending modular transmission system. I suppose the transmission system is not the sending of information, but it's the transmission that powers the motor. Changing the gear torque, probably. But the article's over at dailycoffeenews.com, and this thing looks more industrial than what you would normally get for your home article. Oh, wait. Let me back up. So in the last article, I gave the name, but in this article, I did not. So this article, this coffee article, is written by Howard Bryman over at dailycoffeenews.com. And so this thing actually looks kind of like a converted meat grinder. Honestly, it's interesting, but it's one of those coffee grinders that has a hopper up on top, and then you push your portafilter into it, and it fills up the portafilter. Those tend to be pretty messy, unless you have a funnel that sits on top to keep all of the grounds in your portafilter. And then from there, it's just bananas. This thing is not it doesn't look cheap, and I don't know about the rest of it yet, so because I didn't read about it. It says currently the only machine in Quaymar's premium category, the Cerio Q, features vertically oriented 77 millimeter custom flat burrs that are spun by a brushless motor at user adjustable speeds of 900, 1200, or 1500 RPM. Not sure if that's what's on the side there, because it looks like it has much greater fidelity there. Maybe it gets closer. Maybe there's pictures that are going to get closer. Anyway, it shows the portafilter getting filled up. Neat photography, an in-action photograph. Our Cerio Q, this is a quote, our Cerio Q has a 1000 watt nominal power. But when we are grinding Italian roast espresso, for example, the grinder will use around 400 to 450 watts. Enzo Appa, CEO of Quaymar USA, told Daily Coffee News, if you want to grind finer, such as for Turkish coffee or light roast beans that are harder to grind, the electronics will give more power to supply the motor. Pretty neat stuff there. But it certainly looks like you can change more than just the power. Yeah, I think that's the grind size there. There's a big knob on the front of this thing. Anyway, it's pretty neat. So let's see what the price is. Usually they have this kind of stuff down at the bottom of it. So, okay, prepare yourself. Introduced in December 2021, the Nemo Q features 54 millimeter flat stainless burrs, and a 110 volt version is available for the North American market. Now, $790. That's the Nemo Q. But pending certifications, the Cerio Q is expected to ship to customers in the United States from the company's Florida-based U.S. branch by the end of this year, with a price tag, I hope everybody's sitting down for this, $3,900 for a coffee grinder. Now, I'm into coffee. I make my own espresso latte every day, every morning. Not just for me, but 2 of them are made at least every morning. No way could I justify $3,900 for a coffee grinder, just the grinder. But again, it's the high-end market. And I was talking about this earlier in another episode, that there is tech, there are services, there are things out there that are so off the radar of the normal Joe that can only be acquired by the, for lack of a better term, filthy rich. And this is one of them. $3,900 is about as approachable as going out and buying a hypercar on a whim, because you were bored on a Sunday afternoon. But it exists for a customer, and I'm sure they will find it. But I love the tech. Don't get me wrong. I love the tech. That's why I'm here. So this next article is over in the Word in Tech. Rare birth of Sumatran rhino brings hope for endangered species. This is over at phys.org, which is probably why it got thrown in the tech side of things. Let's see. It has a picture of a Sumatran rhino, a little baby. The Worldwide Fund for Nature estimates fewer than 80 Sumatran rhinos remain in the world, mainly in the Indonesian island of Sumatra and Borneo. The rhino, named Rosa, gave birth to a female calf on Thursday in Kambas National Park in Sumatra after suffering 8 miscarriages since 2005, when she was brought in from the wild for a breeding program. A lot of people get upset about this kind of stuff, like zoos and reserves and preserves. And unfortunately, without a cultural shift, we will eventually make extinct things that are endangered. A cultural shift has to take place where at some point we say it's no longer allowed, and not just made illegal, but society itself in the region, the culture itself shifts away from thinking that, rhino horn is an aphrodisiac or healthier than something else, particularly when science can derive the same product. But, there's a whole mystique about it, or cultural significance. But if these things die out, are killed into extinction and can't reproduce, what do you do as a culture when you exploit these animals that really should be running free? So go over to phys.org and check it out. The article here, let me post it in the chat. Yeah, it's sad that these are being wiped out. Let's see. I don't see an author on this article. So you're going to have to go over to phys.org anyway to read it and to read more about it. And it's titled Rare Birth of Sumatran Rhino Brings Hope for Endangered Species. Yep. Keep up the breeding program so that they don't get made extinct by basically profiteering, maybe cultural reasons. It doesn't make any sense to breed them out of existence. The next article is in the Word in Tech. Researchers thought they knew how PFAS get into the Great Lakes. Then they made a discovery. It says PFAS pollutants ride rivers across the Midwest and Canada to get to the Great Lakes, but not in the way that a pair of University of Wisconsin-Madison researchers studying the forever chemicals expected. And that could impact how environmental officials regulate the chemicals. So what is really happening here? This is a phys.org article written by Carol Thompson. So let's scroll down a little bit. Christy Remical a professor of civil and environmental engineering, and Sarah Bulguian, a postdoctoral researcher, which is pretty much how it works in research institutions, research universities. You have a professor that kind of guides and assists you in writing your doctoral thesis, and you do the fundamental research, and then you write your thesis, and then you argue the significance of it before evaluators who say, yeah, you've earned your PhD. But all the while you are doing fundamental research. And, I've always wanted to pursue my PhD, but you really end up chasing grants, and you end up doing some serious research, and where I am, maybe I should do it, Anyway, let me check something real quick. I just need to look at something. Okay, so the researcher expected to find that most PFAS in waterways that run through heavily polluted places, like small streams that travel through Marinette, where PFAS was used at Tyco's Fire Technology Center, contaminated groundwater, ponds, and ditches. The streams flowing through well-known polluted sites did carry PFAS, but Remicol and Balguian, my inflection of that last name might be wrong, were surprised to find a concerning amount of PFAS in the samples they took from big rivers, especially the Fox, Peshtigo, and Menominee. So this is a regional research endeavor around the Great Lakes. But make no bones about it, this research applies to any waterway, into a lake, and or into the ocean, as these pollutants are pulled from more toxic regions and then sent down the river. So I don't want anybody thinking that, well, my news is really hyper-focused on the United States, because this type of material that we're talking about goes beyond it. All of my news, really, all of the news that I gather, that I aggregate, falls into three main categories of either business, technology, or sociology. And this here is about business, it's about technology, it's about society. There's business that is contaminating things. There is technology that is being utilized to research it and try and find a solution for it, but really isn't stopping it, because businesses continue to throw contaminants into waterways, hoping that it happened with DDTs as well, hoping that water will dilute it. And then you have society that, without the light of education and research and, the social order of things coming down on business, you don't have change. So we always combine these three things in our lives all the time. And I would say that there isn't one thing in humans' existence that is devoid of those three aspects, particularly sociological forces. It takes a movement to make change, and that's all society driven. So research shines that light that I talk about, because I say in several of my episodes, abuse happens in the dark. If nobody calls out this kind of stuff and proves it beyond a shadow of a doubt, there will be no change, and we'll end up with polluted waterways, polluted oceans, polluted lakes, fresh water will be contaminated. And it's not just limited to, the country I happen to be living in. That said, there's a lot more to this, and you can go over to phys.org and check it out. Obviously, you can come on back and talk to me about it. that'd be great. But I'm going to keep on moving so that we can get through all of these articles. Happy to talk about it in chat, though, if you have questions or comments. The next article is in the Daily News Show. That's this, except that it's the channel on ohmTown. Digitally disappeared. YouTube has deleted 6 years of my show. That's not me. That's the author of this article. Are we a more informed and better society because of this wholesale censorship? So I found out about this actually before I found it inside my aggregator's acquisition of articles throughout the day. And again, I'll preface this. I don't necessarily agree with all of the articles or even the context of commondreams.org's articles. Their particular take, the authors, can sometimes, in my perspective, conflate things. But they have a particular context. They have a particular perspective of things. So I don't discount it entirely. And I accept what's being said. And I think that even if you don't agree with it, you should read material like this to challenge your preconceived notions of what is being said and done out there. So in this particular case, this is an article by Chris Hedges over at commondreams.org. And so the context of this is that there has been an embargo, there has been sanctions, there have been censorship taking place on various platforms. I won't go into all of the reading of this because I know a little bit about it already, but essentially this Emmy-nominated show was hosted by RT America, so Russia Times, and RT International. Well, when all of these sanctions came down and pressure was being put on various platforms, they essentially pulled everything having to do with Russia, in some cases wholesale. And in this particular case, wiped out things apparently lacking any type of context review. They didn't look at the material. They didn't watch the material. They literally just pulled 6 years worth of interviews and commentary. And based on the creator of all of these articles, I'm slowly scrolling through here, but it's really just a mass of context giving information. They wiped out anything having to do with Russia, except that this author is stating that none of the things that were wiped out had to do with Russia. It was interviews, and it lacked anything having to do with Russia. Now, I haven't gone through and seen any of this stuff, but they go into a much deeper scenario of their particular context. And you'll hear me say that phrase, context matters, quite a bit. So it says the most vocal cheerleaders for this censorship are the liberal class. That's just inflammatory. It isn't necessarily a liberal class. I don't like categorizing everybody within a particular class, because there are people that there's greater fidelity there. You can't just label somebody a liberal and suddenly every decision that they make is a bad one. And I'm not saying there are good people on both sides either. I think that too builds a them versus us type of conflict right in that phrase, because it says that there is a them versus us existence, and it's not really like that. Now, there are sometimes small cohorts of people in the grand scheme of things. I'm going to scroll all the way back up to this top of this article. And he's going to just stare at you for a little bit. There are, sometimes conspiratorial efforts underway to force something to happen. But in this particular case, the problem here is that there was zero personal review of the material. It was something that was automated, or a decision that was handed down. And it's a shame. So I hope they had backups and that they'll be able to relist this material at some point, once they are cleared to do it. But just like every other platform, if you are being hosted somewhere else and you offend in some way the wrong person, you can be pushed right off, because you're essentially going into somebody's house, although invited, and saying things or doing things that the platform doesn't agree with. Twitch could do it to me tonight because I'm saying this, and they don't like it. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't care. But YouTube certainly cared, and Google certainly cared. And so off this guy's material goes. So always keep a backup, folks. So let's continue on to the next article. And this next article is in the Hatch Ideas channel. 4 reasons to press pause on social audio. The excitement over social audio is palpable, judging by the number of companies building out apps like Clubhouse or features to support it. However, marketers should be aware of potential drawbacks of entering social audio right now. Do you work in marketing, media, and advertising industry? They talk about this kind of stuff over at Business Insider. We'll click the link. Oh, I actually had it already open. Let me go back. Dunk. This article is over at businessinsider.com, and it's written by Deborah Aho Williamson. The middle name is AHO. But it says social audio marketing challenges for 2021. This title changed from what the URL initially was. So the URL initially was 4 reasons to press pause on social audio. Social audio relevancy after COVID-19. For all its growth in recent months, Clubhouse had just 12.2 million downloads worldwide through March 9th of 2021. Per App Annie, which I have never heard of, as a matter of fact. So if you are interested in something that monitors apps, apparently App Annie does. There's no guarantee the app will remain as red hot as it was in February. It was already starting to show signs of cooling down last month per Sensor Tower, which is another one. So go and check that out. Other buzzy social apps before it, Vine to name one, have followed a similar hockey stick trajectory before sliding back down. So let's see here. Oh, and there's one that's actually powered by Amazon called AMP. And that's a social audio radio streaming app, and you have to follow certain rules in that app. And it's kind of open for the public. You can apply to use AMP. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Because now I have forgotten what on AMP. ONAMP.com, on AMP. Well, anyway, these social radio stations are essentially Twitch without the video. Everything that I'm doing here, I can do on AMP, except that I can do it from my phone, and I can pull in audio from and legally stream it without having to go and get author's permission. But it acts as radio. So while I want VODs and I want to be able to post it as a podcast and I want to post it over at YouTube, I don't believe I can do that with AMP or any social radio station. But it's another vehicle to reach an audience, and sometimes the audience really buys into it, and sometimes the creator wants to be able to do it with drop dead simplicity, which is exactly what AMP does. The same thing with Clubhouse, same thing with other streaming apps. They serve a particular purpose. So it says here, markets shouldn't enter audio in 2021 with the idea of generating a massive return. For one, the environment isn't conducive to doing anything splashy, and given the challenges with scale described above, the end results may be spotty at best. Yeah, I agree. You're not going to get a massive audience unless you are very charismatic with your voice and you are entertaining, and you talk about something that goes viral. Hell, you could probably just act like a complete train wreck and you'll go viral. I'm sure if I started doing things a little more wild, I'd get a little bit more traction, maybe go viral. But you got to be yourself. Otherwise people are going to see you faking it. So, at any rate, I think that this article is right on target. It says, even if conversations are moderated, there is no way to know what someone is going to say when they go live. The spontaneity has strong appeal, but being live is a nervous place for brands to play because it's very easy for that to go very wrong, said Karen Staunton, the West Coast engagement director at a digital agency, Grow. Yeah. But you can put a lag on it and not a sensor, but a button. You can put basically a sensor button. Now I don't do it, but I can do it. I used to use a mixer that had a built-in sensor button, but it would just beep. Where is it now? Oh, there it is. So it's a Go XLR. Oh, I'd show you, but I don't want any dead air. Let's go on to the next article. This next article is over in the Mobile Channel. And it's Condé Nast. Workers form company-wide union. I'm not sure where all Condé Nast is right now in what all they own, but they are involved in a social news gathering site. Let's click this link. It takes us over to the New York Times, and it's an article written by Katie Robertson. Did I tell you who wrote that last one? Let me back up. I'm really sorry. Really sorry. Yeah, okay, I did. So this next article is over at New York Times, and it's written by Katie Robertson. And it says a union will cover more than 500 employees from all of Condé Nast's brands, except the 4 publications that already have unionized. Interesting. And with the Great Resignation and people being forced to return to work, I would not be surprised if more unions start forming. I think that it's probably the one thing that, I kind of say everything old is new again, because really, eventually everything old does come back. Unions were declining, and then I think they started picking back up, and people are just kind of burnt out with getting no benefits, getting pittance for compensation. Being forced now to travel with inflation and whatnot increasing. This isn't just us in the United States. It happens everywhere. But the context changes. It's cost of living is different in different countries. People are just kind of burnt out, and they want to have a good work-life balance in exchange for wild compensation. There are some industries, law, for instance, where you can make $250,000 as a first year out of law school attorney, working for a firm, but you're going to be working your butt off. 2,000 hours is an understatement. You will go beyond that if you are hungry for money. Not hungry for food, but hungry for money. It says the union will cover more than 500 employees from all of Condé Nast brands, except from those from Ars Technica, Pitchfork, Wired, and the New Yorker, which unionized separately with News Guild in recent years. And it says, quote unquote, "We plan to have productive and thoughtful conversations with them over the coming weeks to learn more," a Condé Nast spokesman said. The company has voluntarily recognized the 4 existing unions. That's good. This is what happens. Okay, let's continue on to the next article. Sorry, let me scroll up to the top of this page, for crying out loud. What happened here? So CNN Plus launches with Reddit-like interactive Q&As. They have a screenshot, but it says CNN's premium streaming service launches today. The service, CNN Plus, will debut with about a dozen weekly shows, more than 1,000 hours of on-demand content, and a Reddit-like interactive tool for asking reporters and guests questions about the day's biggest news. It's a major bet on viewers being willing to pay not just for news, but for more news, and that the CNN brand can beat out other often freely available options. Interesting take. They're basically thinking that, let's see, but will viewers be willing to pay for it? This is an article over at TheVerge.com written by Katie Keck. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. I want to see. So the implication here is that whoever is going to be answering these questions are filled in well enough. I hope that I just don't see reporters and guests answering questions in real time without some wildly high compensation. You know, reporters, they don't just get paid a salary typically, depending on who they're working for and what they are as reporters. You know, there's a lot of reporters that are going out there and just finding gigs and doing the research and then selling the research, the article, the reporting to companies like AP. And they get compensated well, arguably. You know, it's very subjective. But let's see here. What else does it say? CNN Plus isn't just a digital library for coverage from its cable sibling. Available on Amazon Fire TV, Android phones, and tablets, and Apple devices, the app will launch with new shows from Audie Cornish, Anderson Cooper, and Jake Tapper, among others. At its core, it's a product for people who, they throw in an interjection here, God help them, need a dedicated streaming service for news coverage that goes beyond what's already available through paid newsletters, documentary services, and CNN's existing 24-hour nonstop channel. See, but the CNN Plus is tying in a discussion option. But again, maybe I'll subscribe to this and see how it actually plays out, because to me, being able to interact with a reporter about the article, I must scroll up real fast, by the way, seems like a nightmare for the reporter. And it's a time sink. I mean, it really is. When you're interacting with people, you can't do much of anything else. It's really staccato with getting work done. This next article is about a keyboard. And just a warning, I love mechanical keyboards. I have several. But I've come to the conclusion that I have a problem with today's keyboards, and that is, I've said this in a previous episode way back. You know, I'm on episode 88 now of my stream. Reminder, be sure to follow if you're in my chat. Would really appreciate getting that right there up to 100. That would be awesome. That's my follower goal. It's not that high. It's 50. You know, I'm at 23, I think. So be sure to follow me. I would really like it. Anyway, mechanical keyboards or keyboards in general are not ergonomic. And the ones that do exist that are ergonomic for a general consumption kind of thing. And it kind of hits the target, but not really. Everybody operates differently. So the ergonomic keyboards that are slightly arced like a banana, they don't really hit the mark right. Because everybody sits differently. Everybody has different length arms slightly, different sized hands slightly. And so the real problem here is that any fixed keyboard immediately causes problems with the angles of your wrist. You can't see because I've got a long sleeve shirt on, but when you break your wrists so that they are parallel with the home row of a standard straight keyboard or a slightly curved ergonomic keyboard, you're still breaking your wrist, which messes up your tendons and the flow of blood and the nerves. Eventually, over time, it can lead to repetitive strain injury, and you can have permanent damage, or you might have to go and get surgery, right? Carpal tunnel syndrome. Well, I buy now completely split keyboards, but they're wildly expensive, except for like one brand, which is Mistel, Mistel. Now this is a Newfie Air 60 keyboard. It's mechanical, it's portable. They call it adorable. But it's a tiny mechanical keyboard, perfect for pairing with an iPad mini or being on the go really with anything. But let's go and check it out. This is an AppleInsider.com article written by Wesley Hilliard. And I love this little keyboard, but you have to get used to it. If you are like me, where you can type over 100 words a minute, when you have these little micro keyboards, you are really crammed into this tiny little space, and you have to just, you're just like a blur, and cramped in. And it gets worse with the smaller keyboards because, again, your wrist has to be broken really close together so that you can type. So I would suggest that the market shift away from these little mechanical keyboards. They have their purpose, right? So if I need a keyboard and I'm going to a site somewhere, I'll grab this because I know that I'm using it for a short period of time. But if I'm going to go to a different site where I know that I'm going to be spending hours, I will bring a split keyboard. It's completely separated in half. Right down. Well, it depends on the keyboard. Sometimes they throw one letter on the other side, but you kind of draw a line from F7 to the Y to the N, and you've got half of a standard split keyboard. But this will end up, if you use it too long, having adverse effects on your wrist, depending on your anatomy, your kinetics, your skeleton, the ability for your tendons and blood vessels and nerves to withstand this position for extended periods of time. So it won't always do it. And you may feel tension or something like that, and that's the end of it. But for some people, it can lead to some serious problems. And it's not this keyboard in particular, it's all keyboards. And that's what our ergonomics are all about. So this is a neat little keyboard, definitely, for sure. Yeah, I dig it. I might actually end up getting it just so that I can say that I've got it. I can always use another keyboard, I suppose. Pretty neat. Comes with a case. Yep, it is perfect for an iPad. Okay, so I'm going to scroll up real quick. Sorry about that. And we're going to continue on. This next article is another keyboard, if you can believe it. Yep, 2 articles about keyboards. This is about a Keychron Q3, is a premium keyboard with a more spacious layout. If you like the look of Keychron's excellent Q1 and Q2 mechanical keyboards, but aren't a fan of their compact layouts, then the Q3 might be for you. It has a larger and more traditional 10 keyless design, which means it should feel more familiar to most people. Despite its larger layout, the Q3 uses a similar aluminum construction and gasket mount design to the Q1 and Q2, which made for a great typing feel on both keyboards. By the way, if you've never had a full metal keyboard with mechanical switches and quality keys, you don't know what you're missing. It can get quite pricey, thousands of dollars. They can start out pricey, $400, $500. But it's something that you can invest in. If you use it all the time, you just can't go wrong. Particularly with hot swappable switches and keycaps that you can replace. It is an investment, but it's an investment that literally becomes an heirloom item. If you don't have kids, you can have kids, and you can hand down your favorite keyboard to your kid, and you can get another one, or whatever. Same thing with your office chair. Invest in a quality office chair. You don't need a gaming chair. You don't need anything glitz and glammy. All that is, unless they donate it to you, and then fine. But you will want to sit in a quality chair if you are spending 8 hours in a chair, 7 hours in a chair, 6 hours in a chair. Your back will love you, and so will your feet. At any rate, and then invest in a sit-stand desk. That's what I'm using today. It's in the standing position. That's why you can see the top of the lights back there. But you invest in this kind of stuff once, and you'll never have to replace your seat unless you do something derpy to your chair or your keyboard or your desk. Otherwise, you're going to keep on spending trying to get something that works, but only finding out 6 months later that it doesn't really work. But let's check out the Keychron Q3. And again, this is an article over at TheVerge.com written by John Porter. And there's a video here. And this is more like a standard keyboard. It has the direction keys. It doesn't have the 10 key, which is like the number pad off to the side, right? You can actually buy those separately and scoot them out of the way from your desk if you are so inclined. But again, these standard keyboards mess with your wrists. But I'll also say I love mechanical keyboards, particularly high quality, where you can customize them. You can take the keys apart and add lubrication and other things to them. Yeah, it's really neat. Let's see. The keyboard is available with a programmable dial. That's cool. Neat. So it has all kinds of stuff on it. And again, maybe I'll get one of these too, because prices start at $154 for the bare bones version, which comes with without switches or caps, and then $174 for a fully assembled model with PBT caps, which basically plastic caps that have the letters pressed on them and maybe a texture. And it says, and yes, it's available with a reprogrammable volume knob. $184 fully assembled, or $164 bare bones. But you can read more about this over at The Verge and watch that video over on YouTube. Okay, so this next article is about the Moon Knight. So this one kind of came out of nowhere for me. I've known about Moon Knight coming, but Moon Knight being pulled into MCU, to me, I didn't see a market for it when I first heard about Moon Knight. I've actually asked people that are really into Marvel, about Moon Knight, and they're like, what? Well, anyway, it says, Oscar Isaac stars as the Man of Many Masks. And there's actually some videos of Moon Knight over on YouTube. And we'll click this link. It takes us over to The Verge. And it's an article written by Charles Pulliam Moore. And it has a picture of Moon Knight. And I did like a cursory look into Moon Knight. I still don't see where it's coming from for its integration into MCU. It says here, though Moon Knight is the latest in Disney Plus's current wave of superhero shows, it often feels like a throwback to Marvel's classic approach to reworking lower profile comic book characters into household names meant to become key players with a larger cinematic universe. That relative change of pace is one of the things that Moon Knight has going for it compared to other recent series that tend to make more sense the more of the MCU you've consumed. But Moon Knight's also a foray into the fraught world of character studies with where bold acting and directorial choices jump out in ways that underline how easy it is for comic book adaptations to go sideways when they get too caught up in their own headlines. And I really couldn't agree more. But Disney is really well known for integrating new into the steady state and then taking that new from within another show and kicking them off into their own show altogether. This happens in the real world, not in the MCU, even more so. So, an actor can come into the fold of Disney and be a subordinate character in a show that already has great ratings, but it's there to highlight that actor, whoever they might be. And then from there, they test, did the market really like that new actor? And then he or she gets a show, right? Once they have a new show, it's pushing the marketing for that show, but they already know just how popular that actor is going to be, how successful, unless they completely fall off the rails, which I've seen before. And everybody knows about those. So this might be what Moon Knight does, based on how positive the performance is on Disney Plus. They may break out into their own movies and integrate it into the MCU in a greater way. The next article is in the Hatch Ideas channel, and it's here are the global corporations with the best company culture according to employees. And this is a list. It says comparably just published its newest ranking of 2022 best global company culture. The workplace culture site used employee ratings from March 2021 to March 2022 to create this ranking. Microsoft landed at the very top of this company ranking, followed by IBM. Some companies stand out for their company culture. Apparently Microsoft is one of them. So let's take a look at that link. This is a Business Insider article written by Madison Hoff. Let me scroll down. It's quite a long article based on what I'm seeing. And I won't play videos or their audio. So let's see here. When employees understand and embrace your company's culture, they believe they are part of a team and that their individual contributions help the company grow and succeed. FlexJobs' Rachel Pelta wrote in a blog post on the job search site. They are motivated to do the best job they can, making them engaged and positive employees who are less likely to quit their jobs. Imagine that, feeling as if you are a positive member of a team and not just being exploited and told you can't go to the bathroom because you're not pushing enough material through, the processing side of things in a warehouse, or you're not allowed to wear a certain clothing or say a certain thing or whatever. I mean, there's so many things that management gets bent out of shape about that really shouldn't matter, including one that I'm kind of biased about, and I'm honest about it. I don't think people need to go into a brick and mortar building anymore. They can stay home, and they can come to quote unquote, a campus, whatever it might be, the enterprise, just to make their presence known periodically and connect with fellow employees. Call each other up on the phone or get into a company Discord and say, hey, I want to go and meet. You want to go and have lunch and we can talk about a project or whatever. Make it like that. But some places aren't like that. Well, this is a big list here, so I won't go through the entire thing. It says below are the top 25 companies that made this comparably list. Microsoft placed at the top of the list based on the questions and ratings used to come up with the ranking. Other companies that were highly rated for their company culture include HubSpot, Chegg, and RingCentral. That's interesting. All part of the top 10. So I'm going to... Number 25 was Ford Motor Company. Yeah, it depends on probably the the project team itself. The more innovative side of things may have a different culture than the old blue side. Gym Pass is number 24. I think if you get smaller and smaller, you'll have a different culture there too. So I'm not sure how many companies in here are more on the startup side, but I'm not going to go through the whole list. I'll let you go over there and check out everything. It starts at 25 and goes down to number 1, which is actually up in positive culture. Again, this is an Apple Insider article. Here are the global corporations with the best company culture according to employees. Maybe in there they define what global corporations are. Again, this article is written by Madison Hoff. And I've got a couple more articles. This next article is over in Hatch Ideas. Lawmakers have introduced a bill that would allow the U.S. Treasury to create a digital dollar, as if we can't do this already. U.S. lawmakers proposed a bill for a digital dollar that would be issued by the U.S. Treasury instead of the Federal Reserve. The digital dollars, in this case, would operate separately from any blockchain technologies, unlike cryptocurrencies. China has already seen billions of dollars in transactions for its digital yuan among individuals and corporations. 4 U.S. lawmakers proposed the new bill Monday that would authorize the Treasury Department, rather than the Federal Reserve, to create and issue an electronic dollar. My understanding, well, I'll have to do a deeper dive and do it as one of my other shows when I spin it up. Because there's a lot here to unpack. We have the technology to do this already. Like I said at the beginning of this article, we could do this in a heartbeat. The problem is that our financial institution is essentially a quasi-government agency. The Federal Reserve issues our currency based on policy with the federal government. The Federal Reserve is not purely government. And there's a lot of machinations that take place there in the Federal Reserve, including it costs the federal government money to print money. Yeah. So it doesn't just get made out of thin air. It actually costs money to make money, and that cost goes to the Federal Reserve. But let's continue on over to the article itself. This is a businessinsider.com article written by Phil Rosen. And although I am all for it, the potential for manipulation is a lot faster when cash is removed from the process. That said, a lot of currency is shifted right now digitally, with it being pegged to physical money, and or other things like gold, other precious metals, and many other things. But the dollar is the physical dollar, not a digital currency. This would excise the burden of printing money, but lends itself to an easy abuse of nature, in that all they have to do is say, let's spin up some more cash. And we've done that with physical cash again and again, to the point where there's so much money chasing after so few resources that we are suffering now inflation coupled with deflation. If you've been to my shows, then you have already heard me say this several times. Let's throw this link into chat. And the next article is U.S. video gaming industry in 2021, gaming devices and gaming video content viewership trends. Now, I don't have much to say about this, so I'll throw it in the chat, but it says gaming usage and viewership of gaming video content increased in 2020, but we expect some of that growth to taper off in 2021. Obviously, this is an article that's newly added or updated. Let's go over to the article. This is a business insider intelligence article. So insiderintelligence.com. And let me see who the author is of this. It doesn't actually say. Okay. So this is an older article. And I thought that it was interesting that they are talking about, as physical sporting events were put on hold and brick and mortar stores closed the doors, digital entertainment alternatives ranging from Fortnite to Animal Crossing provided consumers the ability to hone electronic communication skills and expand virtual cities and islands. But it seems to be kind of lackluster. It says digital gamers 2021 to 2025, and it seems pretty kind of low-key change, right? But I've seen a lot, just a massive uptick in, at least my perspective, and it's anecdotal because I don't have the back-end data. A lot of people started switching over to Twitch. And there's turmoil, people are switching over to YouTube and Facebook gaming. And so this kind of taunted me into wanting to do a deeper dive into this. And so that is on my plate. And if I have time, I'll be able to go and do it. It says the pandemic created demand for both video game consoles and cloud gaming in H1. I guess the first half of 2020, Nintendo reported a 73.3 year-over-year increase in revenues, much of which was attributed to sales of the Nintendo Switch, while global cloud gaming revenue grew by nearly $1 billion from 2020 to 2021. And I think that there's no real stop in that. So according to December 2021 data from Sensor Tower, annual mobile game app store revenues increased over 16% year over year, and 10% for iOS. So 16% for Android, 10% for iOS. So that's the mobile gaming side of things. And there's a whole lot more in this for gaming stats. It's focused on US. Unfortunately, I don't have more relevant data for the global market. The next article is a merger. So measurement giant Nielsen sold to private equity group for $16 billion. Media measurement mainstay Nielsen said it had agreed to be acquired by a private equity group for $16 billion after holding out for a higher price than a previous bid. Nielsen said Tuesday that it would be purchased by a group led by Evergreen Coast Capital Corporation, an affiliate of activist fund Elliott Investment Management LP. So this is an article over at variety.com written by Brian Steinberg. And it hints at an eyeball-based abacus as their cover art for this article. They too have the ability to play audio of the article. So if you go over to variety.com and find this article, you can just hit a play button and it'll play for you. Let's see. So the Elliott Investment Management LP Fund, or company, which has been lobbying for a Nielsen sale, and Brookfield Business Partners LP, in a deal that calls for an all-cash deal of $28 per share or $16 billion, including the assumption of debt. But Nielsen had previously blocked the sale, saying it did not value the company's growth prospects properly. So I guess they reanalyzed it and came out of the gate with, what was the total? Yeah, 16 billion. So yeah, it stayed the same apparently. Nielsen had lost industry accreditation for its national TV rating service and is working on a new measurement methodology that would tabulate unduplicated cross-stream viewership, but it will not be rolled out in full for several months. And that's the big problem with streaming services. Unless you have trackers embedded in everything, it's really nebulous as to the number of eyes and how long people are watching. But Nielsen's always had families, Nielsen families as they were referred to, that accepted the responsibility of tracking what they were watching. Now you can do it on a per website, per client, per device process. So for instance, Apple could probably give all of their telemetry to a service like this and just rake in the dough but do it anonymously. Okay, and the last article for today is in the Hatch Ideas channel. It says America is entering the great experiment of hybrid work, and I would argue that this goes beyond, again, America. Companies will need to find a new model that works for them and their employees, many of whom prefer to work at home some days. This wasn't really the intent to end on this one, that I have kind of a dog in this hunt. It can be hard to remember what work at the office was like before the pandemic forced millions of Americans to start working from home. That shift was monumental and seemingly implausible until it happened. But people soon adapted to saying, sorry, you're on mute on Zoom calls and wearing sweatpants all day. Yeah, I don't wear sweatpants all day. But let's click on this and go to The Guardian. This is an article written by Lauren Aratani. And let's see, I'll scroll down and see. Nicholas Bloom says, this is a brave new world. We're doing something we've never done before, which is we're going to go en masse hybrid. An economics professor at Stanford. Let's see what else they say in this. Companies that once told employees that they would be working from home indefinitely have set dates to return to the office. Microsoft was the first big tech company to announce that it wanted its employees back in the office by the end of February. Other companies, including Google and Apple, soon followed suit. Twitter, which is at the beginning of the pandemic, told employees they could work from home forever, said it would reopen its offices in mid-March. Yeah. And I have heard from many other people that they either return or they lose their office, or they can work from home, but they have to come into the office periodically 2 days a week or 3 days a week. Some people 4 days a week, and you get to take every other Friday off, kind of like a work from home day instead of a show up to work periodically day. And I'm not fond of it. I would rather work from home. I can get more meetings done. I can get more work done in my particular field. And the context matters again. And this whole butt in seats kind of thing just smacks of narrow-minded thinking. Again, it all depends on the context of it. So Bloom, who has studied remote work for nearly 2 decades, has been consulting with hundreds of companies and managers on their return to office plans. Managers, it seems, want their workers back in the office. A survey from Slack found that executives were 3 times more likely than non-executive employees to want to return to the office full time. Yeah, because we can still get work done without having to travel 2 to 4 hours a day or an hour a day. You know, I mean, when you work 8 hours, you sleep 8 hours, arguably, you only have 8 hours of life existence in the work-life balance, and you don't get paid for traveling to and from work. You only get paid for the hours you're there. Even if you're salaried, you don't count the travel time. All that does is dilute your hourly rate. It's bananas. But that said, until we're all independently wealthy or robots are working for us, and we make the money that the robots are producing, you know, we're stuck going to work. And not everybody can win the lottery. So employees, on the other hand, want to keep working remotely at least some of the week. With today's tight labor market, Bloom said the worst thing a company can do is expect workers to come in 5 days a week. Yeah, I've told many people that you need to change the work-life balance. Otherwise, you're going to lose quality people. We have shown that we can do the work without being in an office. Okay, and that's it for today. The end of this stream is really me highlighting that you can always go over to ohmTown.com when you click that screen. Again, unless I've broken something in the last hour. Again, it's possible. It will pop up a whole new mass of articles. And this takes place 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.